This is Ayani.
And this is Corinne.
And you're listening to Sex, Love, Literature, a pop culture podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to Sex, Love, Literature for our third episode. Woot, woot, woot. We are going to be talking today about the 5th season of Lucifer. So I know Corinne and I were very excited about the release of this season, waiting on pins and needles perhaps in a way for it to start. And let's say we've got some mixed feelings, let's say. So, for those of you that are not Lucifans, Lucifer is an American quote-unquote urban fantasy story / cop procedural that premiered on Fox. I want to say, how long ago was that? I think it was 2016. So back in 2016, but was actually canceled after its 3rd season. However, fans kind of rallied this Save Lucifer campaign, and it was actually picked up by Netflix for another 3 seasons. So season 4 and 5, as well as season 1 through 3, are on Netflix right now. And a 6th season, as well as I think the second half of season 5, are in production, forthcoming, let's say, to be released on Netflix. So season 6 is actually going to be the last season of Lucifer. I did read an article that said that season 5 was originally going to be the last season, but Netflix was like, how about one more? So that's exciting. And just for some reference, the characters in Lucifer are actually based on the characters from DC Comics' Sandman, which I highly recommend, written by Neil Gaiman. And Tom Ellis is the main actor who plays Lucifer Morningstar, aka the Devil, with Lauren German as his love interest, Detective Chloe Decker.
Yeah, so to give you some context about the main characters that we'll be talking about, for those of you who haven't seen this show, obviously, we're talking about Lucifer. Can you fucking hear that? Okay, sorry. We live in Florida, and the sky has decided now is the time to put on a show, so.
Right. I mean, we're talking about gods and the devil. Maybe it's like fun backdrop for us there.
But so Lucifer, obviously the titular character, he basically has come to LA to get a vacation from hell because like he's real tired of his job down there. And then Detective Chloe Decker, as Ayani said, his love interest. At least in early season, she was like she solidly held her own in comparison to Lucifer. That may or may not be different this season. But then some other characters that we're going to talk about are Maze, or also known as Mazikeen, who is a demon from hell who came to Earth with Lucifer to sort of be his backup, and she's developed into a fully developed character person of her own. Oh, she's great. Maze is awesome. Another character that we'll talk about is Amenadiel, who is an angel from heaven, I guess.
Yes. An angel from heaven.
But he and Lucifer are brothers, and Amenadiel has since been stuck on Earth for a while and is going on his own journey, and he used to like be able to stop time or slow down time, and that has become more complicated for him. But then he is his love interest partner,
baby mama,
his person with whom he has slept in the past is Linda, who is another main character who's been here since the beginning. She originally started out as Lucifer's therapist
and fuck buddy,
which is not, I would like to point out, ethical as a therapist. But she does cut off sleeping with Lucifer pretty early on.
Yeah.
And then
only after a couple episodes.
And like she and Maze become besties, and Linda is an excellent character. And then the last character we'll talk about a little bit is Ella Lopez, and she is the forensic scientist at the police department where Chloe works and where Lucifer is a consultant, and she's amazing. But she's the most recent addition of the characters we'll talk about. She joined the show in the 2nd season.
Yeah. So one thing that we wanted to mention that's kind of interesting about Lucifer, and this is something that Corinne actually points to all the time, is that it almost feels like every season of this show is its own thing, its own vibe. I don't know if that's because just shifting of the writer's room or just the kind of stories they're deciding to tell, or even if it's completely on purpose. But it kind of feels like every season is dramatically different from the ones that have come before it, with, of course, the through line of this relationship between Lucifer and Chloe, right? But yeah, so something to keep in mind as we're talking about season 5 today. So why are we talking about Lucifer?
I don't know. Why
I
are we?
I have no idea. So to speak a little personally for a second, a lot of my research right now is focused on monsters, monstrosity, and why there's different kinds of desire for the monstrous body. And one of the chapters of my dissertation is actually going to be looking at kind of the quote unquote, well, I guess the king of the underworld as a romantic figure. And Lucifer is a show that plays into that to a T. We have the devil as not only the leading man, but the leading romantic lead, who's played by a very attractive actor. Like you're supposed to be attracted to Lucifer in this, but not in a way that he is, I don't know, leading us astray, if that makes sense. We're supposed to be engaging with him as a character.
So his, building on that a little bit, his sort of power is desire. And it's not that he makes people desire things. He makes people realize what they desire. And then people, there's like this whole arc much in like earlier seasons where like, it's not that the devil made them do it. It's they did it because they wanted to.
Right.
So,
yeah. So that's part of my interest in Lucifer. And also, this is another one of those shows that everybody is beautiful. You know, we have a habit of talking about these. I wonder why. But but beyond that, it's just kind of like a fun romp of a show. And when we saw that season 5 was coming out, I was like, and I'll own this one. Like, you were Roswell, but for me, this one was like, oh, I definitely want to talk about Lucifer. So did I just bully you into talking about this, or like,
no.
Are you actually interested?
Normally, Ayani is less of a bully about making me watch things than I am about making her watch things. Because I think she originally watched Lucifer, I think, on the recommendation of a friend, and like talked it up to me, but I didn't pick it up probably until like 6 months to a year after she watched it. Mostly because I just needed something to watch. And I was like, oh, Ayani liked Lucifer, I'll give it a shot. And then I like obviously plowed through it real quick. But Ayani makes light suggestions and I am a bully. So
well, I mean, usually you bully me into watching things that I end up enjoying, so it's fine. But yeah, so
we do want to note really quickly that something that we've become increasingly uncomfortable with this show is that it does function as propaganda to some extent. And that's something that I think sat more uncomfortably with me this season, particularly in the light of Black Lives Matter protests. And not that has ever not been a problem, but I've become increasingly aware of it, and it has made me increasingly uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I know, speaking personally for me, as somebody who spent many a sick day watching endless episodes of Law and Order and SVU, this is just something that has been on the mind and occupied the mind over the last, I don't know, let's just say over the course of the year. So kind of calling to question some of the things we intake without question. So that is something we wanted to call to attention here. We are not necessarily going to be focusing so much on the cop procedural side of things, and more, I think,
and
on
in a way,
side.
it's become less of a cop procedural over time.
Yeah,
the first season was definitely 100% cop procedural. Also, one of the cops is like the devil. Right. And then they've shifted more to like character dynamics, and there is still like a serial killer they have to catch this season.
Right.
Annoying.
But yeah, but it feels like kind of the murder plots in every episode are more now frame narrative than the main narrative, if that makes sense.
It's something that character driven now.
Yeah. I mean, something that the show has always done is kind of set up a crime, a murder that happens. And then when they're interviewing people or talking through different people, the kind of statements that they get, the kind of revelations that they have are in some way or another reflective of whatever emotional drama the characters are going through. So that's still very, very, very much the case. But yeah, it's not Law and Order with the devil anymore. Right. It's taking on a different kind of vibe. And also this goes without saying, but there will be spoilers for the first half of season 5 of Lucifer in our episode.
Not to mention the first 4 seasons.
Yeah, right. So we've been kind of animatedly talking up to this point, but I'm gonna burst the bubble here. We weren't actually that wild about this season. We do have some fun things that we do want to talk about and think through, but I think it's important to kind of note that we weren't as enthused about it. We weren't as wild about it. Like, for you, it even took like some additional effort to get through it with me over your shoulder, like, we're doing the podcast. You know? But yeah, we just it didn't scratch the same itches, you know? I know you were talking a bit about it feeling a little clunkier.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed right off the bat. So we start out this season with Lucifer back in hell and Chloe in LA, and they declared their love for each other at the end of last season. I mean, technically, I guess Lucifer didn't say I love you, but he said it was always you or whatever, and Chloe said she loved him. But we start out with them separated, and everything is very unsettled, but like it didn't work for me in the beginning because like part of what makes it interesting is like the back and forth play between Lucifer and Chloe, and starting out with them not together was boring.
Yeah, and I do want to say that I remember at the end of season 4, I think I cried when they went their separate ways.
I was so upset. Because, so like there's been this whole buildup for Lucifer and Chloe to get together over 4 seasons, and they hadn't yet. And then they finally have this like declaration, and so like there were obviously a lot of like obstacles to overcome, like Chloe finding out Lucifer was actually the devil. Blah, blah, blah,
he never lied about it.
He did never. He has been very honest, but also like if someone told you they were the devil, would you believe them? I do not think so.
I mean, depends on some people. I'm not gonna throw any names out there, but if there's some people who are like, yeah, it's true, I was the devil, I'd be like, I fucking knew it, you monster. But anyhow, continue.
But it starts out with them apart after like we've finally gotten to the point where they've like said how they feel to each other. But the narrative was just moving this whole season. It moved very slowly. The narrative pieces were like big and clunky. Even like the dialogue. I mean, I'm not going to say Lucifer has ever been high art, but it has always been it's always been more like sort of tongue-in-cheek and clever and witty.
Fun. Lighthearted
and fun and like very aware of what it is and playing with that. And this season it like lost a lot of the lightheartedness and the cleverness and was just clunky.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. There were definitely some lines in watching this that made me roll my eyes in a way that I didn't in other seasons.
Also, like, no shade to the actors. I think they were doing the best they could with what they had.
And I will say our opinions are not law, right? Like, I also don't want to put down anyone on the creative staff or on the creative team because, like, I'm not saying I could do better, but like, you know, art is subjective in a lot of ways. So yeah, there were definitely there were more eye roll moments for me where I was like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. Really, this is what we're doing. In a way that I kind of bought in completely to other seasons. And for me, I didn't even really get super invested in what was happening until around episode 4 or 5.
And there are only 8 episodes for this half season.
Right. So it kind of took me even a minute to start to, I don't want to say start to care because I was already invested in the characters, but to like really be like, okay, I'm going to finish this up now. I want to know what's happening.
Well, you know? And maybe another layer of that as well is that even though these are characters that I have been invested in the past, they did not feel familiar to me in a lot of the action.
Speak on that for a second.
Well, it's
what
like
do you mean by that?
It's like they took, so like take Maze or Mazikeen, for instance. She's a character who they've done a lot of work to build a lot of nuance into over the course of the 4 seasons. Like, she started out pretty much solely as Lucifer's sidekick without and so she's played by like a very attractive Black woman, and she like works as a bartender. She likes to have a lot of sex. She's also very violent.
She's so fantastic.
She's excellent. Maze is easily one of the best characters in this show. But
so the actress's name, just really quickly, is Leslie Ann Brandon.
All right, well, and in the past, she's been great, and this actress is obviously still great. And also, like, no shade to the costume department, because they were still on point this season.
Maze's outfits were on point excuse me? I was looking at that like, I want to cosplay that, and I want to cosplay that, and that wig, I need it.
But it's like they took all of these like shades of gray that they've built into Maze's character and sort of like colored them in and like turned her back into like broad strokes, where it's like, Maze has gone from this nuanced, interesting character with her own desires, with her own wants, with her own things that she does, to someone who is upset that Lucifer left her and is sad that she's alone, and like, that's it.
Yeah, and it's not that those things aren't real, you know what I mean? It's not that we as human beings don't struggle with those kinds of things, but I do agree that there feels like some of that playful nuance that was available in other seasons is not necessarily there right now. Yeah, so we are going to talk a bit about Maze a little later, because we adore her so much. We can't not talk about Maze. But why don't we start with thinking a little bit about Lucifer and Chloe. We don't want to, we decided we didn't want to spend the whole time being like, we were sad about this, but really do kind of dive into some of the content. But why don't we start with Lucifer and Chloe, since they are the main couple? Did you want to start with your thoughts on Lucifer and Chloe?
Yeah. So I guess maybe to give some context.
Captain Context over here.
That's me. So we start out with Lucifer and Chloe apart after they've made these declarations to each other. We should also mention that the bad guy this episode is Lucifer's twin, so is also played by Tom Ellis. But except that Lucifer has a British accent and Michael doesn't.
Yeah, he has an American accent, right?
Which it's maybe interesting to think about how the Britishness is part of what makes Lucifer so appealing. Because Michael is not supposed to be appealing.
No, Michael is not supposed to be appealing. Honestly, I know I said we were going to stop complaining, but just to complain a little bit more, I didn't like Michael, but not in the way that he's the antagonistic force this season, and thusly you're not supposed to like him. Like, there are many an antagonist that I enjoy watching them exist.
Yeah, antagonists that you love to hate.
Right, exactly. But Michael was not one of them. I think part of it was that we're revealed who he is in the trailer. So even before we start the season, you know that there's going to be this like, oh, wait, I'm not Lucifer, I'm Michael twist. You know, I'm doing a lot of voices today. This is going to be fun to listen back to. But yeah, so that's already spoiled for us. And then Michael's whole motivation is like, my brother thinks he's so cool and British, I'll show him. I'm gonna fuck up his life. And I'm like, wait, but what? I don't, okay. All right. So it just, I don't know. I wasn't really convinced by his motivation. I didn't like Michael. I didn't like him. Every time he was not there, I was like, oh, I'm getting invested. And then Michael would appear and I go, boo. And I would literally text Corinne and be like, boo, Michael is here. You know, I don't know. Maybe I came to tolerate him more in some of the later episodes, but definitely in the first like 2, I wanted no parts of this.
Well, and maybe part of the reason he's so not compelling is that he doesn't really have a good motivation, because like when we think of the other villains that we've had, like we've had Cain, we've had Charlotte. So Cain obviously is Cain who killed his brother,
right?
And then Like Charlotte, we have like Charlotte, who was the mother of all the angels, so like
Right.
God's wife, which is complicated. But
Right,
like
right, right,
they
right.
had things that they wanted that went beyond I'm a fuck with Lucifer.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Which
Mm-hmm.
is just ultimately not that, like, when we have come to believe that Lucifer will always win,
Right.
it's just not that interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then on top of that, I think with some of the other antagonistic forces, they really intertwined themselves into the lives of our characters. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't just this outside force that was coming in and being like, I'm doing schemes.
Mm-hmm.
Cain was like the head of their division, right?
And
And
it took
then
a long time to figure out who he was as well,
right.
and like
Hmm.
what threat he posed.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And then Charlotte took over this woman's body. Or, well, no, Charlotte was the woman. And then the mother goddess was in her body, had taken it over
Mm-hmm.
after Charlotte had died. So there was all that kind of weirdness that was happening because the mother goddess wanted to be in her son's lives. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
there was all that. And then even with Eve, even though Eve was not a straight antagonistic force, she
Mm-hmm.
was a disruptive force
She was
to
definitely a force of chaos.
right. She was definitely a force of chaos, and a disruptive force to Lucifer and Chloe's relationship, but was very intertwined with the characters and
Mm-hmm.
wasn't just on the outside like, I'm gonna throw some lingerie at somebody and cause trouble, So I mean, I don't know how she would be a sexy problem, from the
Mm-hmm.
outside, but like, you get what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying. So yeah, Michael was this weird kind of like, I'm gonna pretend to be Lucifer for 2 episodes, and
But
then now
it's
I'm
not going to
just
be a surprise because everyone already knows from the trailer.
right, and then I'm just gonna be on the outside trying to fuck shit up. You know what I mean? So I don't,
Mm-hmm.
meh, Michael. But anyhow, Lucifer and Chloe.
Yes. So we've had this will they, won't they play with Lucifer and Chloe over the course of 4 seasons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we finally get to the point where it's like, will they? They will. And
Yay!
spoiler, they have sex.
Yay! I mean, I feel really weird cheering for someone else having sex, but like, it's been a build up for literally 4.5 seasons to get to this point.
So I think we should then think about how Lucifer and Chloe finally sleeping together works, doesn't work. How does it affect their characterization? What does that do for
Sure.
you? What does it do for the show? What do you think?
Sure. Yeah, no, those are some great questions. So okay, let's think a little bit about I guess maybe some of the buildup to it
Mm-hmm.
and how that influenced, I guess, my personal reaction to it. So in episode 2, when Michael is still pretending to be Lucifer, Chloe has kind of made the decision that she is going to try to be more, I don't know, sexually evocative
Mm-hmm.
with Lucifer. And it's kind of like this moment where she makes the decision that she's going to not be the sexy one, because Lucifer, of course, is always the one making the innuendos and is always like, well, we
Mm-hmm.
could get naked right now, and Chloe's like, no, we're
Also,
not going to do that.
maybe for context, Lucifer has slept with thousands and thousands and thousands of people.
Of people, yes, and they're all very happy with the experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of I don't want to say a bridge that they'd have to cross, but in terms of what it means to have sex with and sleep with the devil, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a big thing that Chloe has made the decision that this is a direction that she wants to go in.
Mm-hmm.
And so
We should also add that Chloe is a divorced single mother, so she's not like a virginal kind of
no,
character at all. It's not
no, no,
that
no, 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 no,
direction.
no, absolutely not. Also not enough Trixie. Trixie is her daughter. Not enough
Mm-hmm.
Trixie this season. And I will say her Trixie's father, Dan. I think you introduced Dan, right?
I didn't, but Dan also works at the police department.
Precinct.
He's a
Yeah.
detective. He had a whole arc where he like fucked some stuff up earlier and then had to have a redemption arc, but We like Dan these days. Lucifer doesn't like Dan. He calls him Detective Douche, but I like Dan.
But, Dan is involved in Trixie's life. It's not like,
he's a good dad.
Yeah. But anyhow, so that was kind of a big move. And the concern, of course, in that episode is, oh my God, is she going to sleep with Michael and not with Lucifer? But she knows it's not Lucifer, and she pulls a gun on him, yada, yada, yada. So anyhow, when Lucifer finally gets back, I think it's episode 5? Yeah, I think it's no, it's episode 6. It's episode 6. Lucifer comes back in episode 3, but in episode 6, they're trying, there's always hurdles in these relationships. So even when they're together, they're trying to figure out what it means for them to be together. One of Chloe's exes is an important witness in whatever kind of murder trial is happening. And because of Lucifer's interaction with her ex, also having conversations with Dan, and Chloe's kind of acknowledgement of what it means to kind of be in a relationship with Lucifer over the course of the episode, they decide to have sex together. How do I want to put this? On one hand, I'm surprised that it took this long to get to that point. But honestly, since they were will they, won't theying for 4 whole seasons, it almost seems like it's kind of fast that they're getting in bed with episode 6. Fast in a narrative way. I'm not going to judge anybody for jumping in anybody's bed as long as they're safe, right? But, narratively, I'm kind of surprised that we're already getting to them having sex. But I don't think that's a bad thing, if that makes sense. That's not something I was disappointed by. I was just kind of like, oh, we're here. Well, all right then. Here we go. Yeah, so I don't know. I guess that's kind of a windy-twindy way of saying that that was a good character moment for me, I think. I think they are both characters were in a place that having sex was not an impulsive move, but was something that they were both emotionally ready for, and wasn't just a gratuitous sex scene for us watching, right? Again, not judging gratuitous sex scenes, but personally, I really do like when sex scenes matter to character growth and to character motivation.
It is also, I think, important to note that the sex scene was filmed very differently for Lucifer on Netflix than it would have been for Lucifer on CBS.
Ooh. Yes, very good. Very good.
Was it on CBS or was it on Fox? My bad. On Fox.
Yeah. Oh, actually, so this was something you mentioned that I think it might be, I might throw the ball to you, but you were talking about the difference between Lucifer and Chloe's actual sex scene in this season and her imagined sex dream that she had with him. Like, was it a couple seasons ago?
I think it was in maybe season 2. There's in one of the will they, won't they moments, Lucifer, it ends in an episode ends with Lucifer and Chloe kissing on a beach. And then the next episode opens with that, the elevator doors opening in Lucifer's penthouse and Lucifer and Chloe making out. And I think there's an Evanescence song playing and
Evanescence.
I might be naming the wrong song.
I'm sorry. All I hear with Evanescence is "Bring Me to Life," and I'm like, that was not playing during the sex.
But it's this very interesting, very sort of hot sex scene.
Oh yeah.
That they're definitely playing with the audience expectations, but then Chloe, who doesn't know for real that Lucifer is the devil yet, is starting to almost believe it. And then it turns out we learn that she's having a sex dream about him and he grows horns. And he says I see you found my love handles.
I'm sorry. But see, that's the kind of dumb shit in Lucifer that would crack me up,
But then, then Chloe wakes up, and then I know as an audience member, I, didn't necessarily believe that, it went that quickly to them, doing it, but, I almost did. So then when she woke up, I was like, oh. But then we see Maze, who at that point was Chloe's roommate, sitting watching Chloe eating popcorn, and Chloe's like, what are you doing here? And Maze is like, well, I heard you scream and I thought you were in trouble. And then I realized what was actually happening, so I stayed to watch the show.
Fucking Maze, she's the best.
And then Maze is like, so how was it? But there is a lot of sort of, I think, similar camera movement, there's like a similar aesthetic to Chloe's sex dream and their actual sex scene this season. But I think it obviously it goes further and is more explicit, I think.
Yeah. I mean, of course, we're not talking porn explicit, right? We're still
not at all.
on kind of,
still like, the silhouettes and the like close-ups of like women's legs and whatever.
And very careful camera movement. But something I think that's worth noting is one of the big marketing pushes about Netflix acquiring Lucifer and Lucifer being on Netflix was Tom Ellis's butt. I literally remember. No, I'm serious. I remember there was a trailer that was like he's him in his bathrobe and he's talking to the screen and then he like drops the bathrobe and it's like something like, you get to see more of me or something. So like every season since then, we've got Tom Ellis's butt as part of the show.
The way that we see his butt this season is so completely unnecessary. Like, I'm not mad at it, but it's when Michael is like practicing being Lucifer in the mirror and then is just naked.
Sometimes you just have to be naked to practice your theater, I guess. But yeah, it does this really interesting like pan, right? Because we see him, if I'm remembering correctly, it's the top of him only, and he's looking
like
in the mirror,
yeah,
right. And yada yada yada. But then when it pulls out, you see him standing there completely naked, and it's like, oh, a butt. All right, I was. Sure, this is where we are. So it's really interesting to think about how Tom Ellis and his physique and his look is used to attract certain kinds of fans to Lucifer as a drawing point. So yeah. Not exactly what you were talking about, but it just made me think about it kind of in that section because I'm pretty sure we see some Tom Ellis tushy there too, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we do.
And it feels like, and you can totally disagree with me here, but it feels like he's definitely more on display in that sequence than Chloe is.
I think that's true.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting to think about how these kind of things are filmed, shot, framed, especially when it's a quote unquote long-awaited sex scene, right? Because to be fair, Lucifer has sex all the time in the show. We're constantly seeing him involved and in bed with different people,
especially Eve last season.
Yeah. But this is a particular sequence and scene that I guess fans have been waiting for quite some time.
So I get just. Did it meet your expectations or did it not? Because I almost feel like it was a box they had to check. So like I wasn't mad at it, but I do also feel like it was a box they had to check that the buildup has been so extensive for that they like couldn't, no matter how good they did, I was never going to be that surprised or I don't know. It's almost like it was a box that I knew they had to check. They knew they had to check it.
Yeah.
And they did. And like it was fine, but it didn't blow my mind.
Oh, yeah. I'm not going to say that it was a mind-blowing sequence, but I think for me, the cathartic movement that happened was kind of enough. You know what I mean?
And they do, to be fair, in that episode, like building up to them actually sleeping together.
Excuse me.
They do a lot of like talk between the characters, like narratively about like what happens like when your expectations are so high because like there's been so much buildup. And Ella, who a lot of the time serves as a kind of, I don't know, a place for Chloe to talk about her feelings in the way that Lucifer often talks to Linda, his therapist. Like Ella like talks a lot about like, oh, like did you like how was it or like how do you feel about it? So and Chloe was like, I don't know. And then part of the reason it takes them so long to actually have sex is that they're having trouble navigating their expectations because they have been building for so long.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of a really interesting point to make, is this kind of thought about the build up of expectation. Because I think that's something that Chloe is dealing with throughout most of the season is what are her expectations of this relationship with Lucifer and of Lucifer in general, because we start off with her knowing that he's not here, that he's in hell,
Mhm.
right? And expecting, I guess, to have this long separation from him. Um, and then he's suddenly back, and now the question becomes, how does their relationship change or develop? Oh, shit. That also, I mean, a big thing that happens this season is that Chloe finds out that God blessed her parents in order to make her exist. Or to make her mother conceive. That's the term. not just boofing her out of nothing. So that kind of really fucks with her understanding of her relationship with Lucifer,
Mhm.
because she is kind of like, am I just a gift that somebody wrapped with a bow to give to you?
Mhm.
So a lot of the season, and I mean a lot of this half season, I should say, is her wrestling with what it means to
Mhm.
be
A literal gift from God.
right. Not in the figurative way that we like to say to people.
Mhm.
um, so yeah, I think for me, the fact that there was so much buildup, but also so much that she was wrestling with, cathartically for me, I think it landed.
Mhm.
You don't, it feels like you're not as convinced though.
I'm
It didn't
not.
really work for you.
So I'm thinking about the reason why I wasn't as convinced by the Chloe having feelings about learning she's a gift from God plotline. I think is because it didn't strike a good balance between what characters know and what viewers know. Because viewers have known
Mm,
Chloe was a gift from God since season 2, when
right.
Lucifer found out and had his own little conniption about it.
His panic about it, yeah.
Which is why they don't sleep together in season 2. That's the reason. But like readers have, or not readers, viewers,
Yeah, audiences.
audience members have known that she's a gift from God for so long that it's like, okay, like I know, like it's almost like they had to go through the motions of Chloe finding out and
Mm,
then wrestling with this and feeling like she doesn't have agency and feeling
yeah.
powerless and blah blah blah. But like it is blah 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 because like they're going to do it. It's just a matter
Mm.
of when.
Honestly, okay, so two quick thoughts bouncing off of that. And I don't want to get too far off field here, but I think this is worth mentioning. One, Dan also finds out that Lucifer is the devil this season,
Mhm.
because Michael tells him, because he's a meddling pain in the ass.
Dan is
Excuse me.
basically I guess Ella doesn't know, but Ella is
Yeah.
very Catholic, so I bet when Ella finds out, she'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
But Dan is the
But
only core character from the beginning who still doesn't know.
right, and Trixie notwithstanding, because she's a child.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so Dan's Dan's kind of panic about the whole thing is what resolved in 2 episodes, 3 episodes. It felt kind of rushed and pushed, and like while I did appreciate the fact that Chloe has to wrestle with all this, it feels like maybe they were trying to do so much in these 8 episodes,
Mhm.
that things just don't have an appropriate time to breathe. So we get the panic about being a gift from God. We also get the sex scene. We get the, I mean, I thought this was fun, but the fact that Chloe kind of nabs Lucifer's Jojo mojo for a little bit, and she can kind of pull from Lucifer what he desires, right?
Mhm.
But it was really only 8 episodes. There was a lot that they were kind of jamming in there. And part of that might be that the fifth season was going to be the last season, and they felt like they had to tie up a lot of loose ends.
Mhm.
And what I read in the article is that rather than kind of restructuring everything in the fifth season, the last act is now going to be the sixth season that
Mhm.
they're doing. So it feels like maybe they had a lot of loose ends that they were trying to tie up in 16 episodes.
Mhm.
You know, so that might be why some of it feels so very like compacted and smushed together.
Well, and maybe going back a little bit,
Yeah, go ahead.
I've liked Chloe like for most
Mhm.
of this whole show. Like she's been a
Mhm.
fully developed stereotypical like strong female character who's like very interesting, is like a good mom, is a good detective, and
Yeah,
all.
she's a well-rounded character.
Well, she's been a well-rounded character, but this season, almost everything about her was about how she felt about Lucifer. And to
Mm-hmm.
me, that felt very flat. It's like a character that I had appreciated. Well, it's again like they erased or ignored a lot of the things about her that made her interesting. Like we never saw her with Trixie. We never saw her with her daughter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was disappointing to me.
Yeah.
Because if we turn Chloe into someone that only exists for Lucifer, which is, even though that's something they dealt with narratively, they didn't do anything about it in letting her do anything differently in the show. So like that made her flat for me.
No, that's an excellent point. Yeah. Oh, sugar peas. There was something I was going to say about Chloe and existing for Lucifer that I've forgotten. So that's fine. But no, I totally agree. We don't really get to see her exist outside of Lucifer in the way that we did get to see with a lot of other episodes. Like, we got to know about her relationship with her mother. We got to see her interacting with Dan specifically. We got to see what she was like with Trixie alone. We got to see more of her hanging out with Maze, hanging out with Linda. And actually, that's something that we get cut off from very early on, is that it seems like since Lucifer has left at the end of season 4, that Maze and Chloe had been using each other kind of as emotional crutches. Maze dealing with Eve kind of abandoning her and leaving her, and Chloe dealing with Lucifer having to leave. I guess Maze also feeling abandoned by Lucifer going back to hell. But because Maze tries to kiss Chloe and
it's such a weird sequence. It's like Maze has been working as a consultant instead of Lucifer.
Bounty hunter.
A consultant bounty hunter. She has a very blunt approach to solving crime. But like, it's like, maybe part of why it doesn't work is that everything that has supposedly happened in Maze and Chloe's relationship is told and not shown. And then there is like, it felt like almost weird fan service to have Maze like try and kiss Chloe, but it's like fan service that like who wanted that?
Yeah,
not me.
I mean, I'm sure somebody did, but not us necessarily. And I just as a quick pin, I will say that one of the things that we noticed about Lucifer, and correct me if I'm wrong here, at the very least in this season, Maze is the only character who is queer, right? Well, I guess in Lucifer too.
Yeah, Maze and Lucifer are both queer, but because Lucifer's main relationship has been a heteronormative one, not that negates his queerness, but his queerness isn't centered in the same way as Maze's is. Like when Maze gets fair. Like a big old crush on Eve,
right, sings her a song, but it and this is something that I'm wrestling with, and that maybe we put a pin in for a larger conversation another day. But the fact that we know Maze largely deals with things with violence and having sex, right? She's a demon, that's what she does. But also when she's the only character whose queerness is kind of up front and center, the fact that, she just tries to kiss everybody as her way of dealing with her issues and her trauma and her abandonment just seemed, I don't know, it kind of left a funny taste in my mouth. But I think that also might just be how the entire season came together, that maybe if things went a different way, it wouldn't have bothered me so much if we got more of the well-rounded, layered, well-constructed Maze, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, it's like she was reduced to abandonment that she deals with in unhealthy ways.
Yeah.
Like that's yeah.
Actually, since we're talking about her, do we want to transition to thinking about Maze, Amenadiel, and Linda? I know we wanted to talk a little bit about Ella and Pete too, because we rambled about that. But
let's talk about Maze, Amenadiel, and Linda, and then we can circle back to Ella and Pete and how that and like what light they shed on Lucifer and Chloe's relationship.
Sure. So I will say that while we do have some issues with how Maze was constructed this season, it was her plotline and Amenadiel and Linda's plot lines that were the ones that were most compelling to me this season. I may be a little biased because they're some of my favorite characters, but I think kind of what Amenadiel and Linda were having to deal with parenting and being parents was very, very interesting. And Charlie, their baby, is just the cutest little nugget. Oh my goodness. But I really appreciated kind of Amenadiel both having to come to terms with what it means to fear for a child, you know, and the fact that you kind of can't always protect your baby in a way. And this idea of kind of having to, you know, I think Linda says that every day he'll need us a little less, and that's the goal. But also that he likes being a father. I think Amenadiel's character arc over the entirety of the show has been super interesting in how he changes how he thinks not only about humanity, but his relationship to humanity. You know, so him kind of being like, no, you know, sometimes I need a break. I need a day off to go out and, you know, have a beer and talk to Dan. But he really likes being a father. And to me, that felt kind of poignant. You know, especially since where he started kind of at the beginning of the show, you know? And Linda is delightfully Linda as always. But I two things, and feel free to jump in here. I appreciated how fucking tired she was all the time, right? And how, like, she would be pumping when Lucifer would come in, and, like, you know, she's like, I just need to talk to adults. Like, I really appreciated that it wasn't kind of, I don't know, they didn't gloss over. I mean, it's still, you know, quote unquote network television, right?
Yeah.
But, like, she wasn't the perfect, most wonderful mother of all time. She was having a hard time. Charlie literally cried for an entire episode once, you know? But also, there was this kind of interesting move that Linda had a child that she had abandoned
when she was 17.
Yeah. That, again, super fast. That was all... It was introduced, I think, when Michael was around, maybe episode 2 or so, that she had this fear about parenthood. Because did we say that Michael's power is fear? I think you said that.
I don't remember if he said. So just how Lucifer brings out people's desires, Michael brings out people's fears.
Yeah. So we knew that she had this fear about parenthood. And then a little later, she pulls out a Polaroid from 1994, which made me giggle because that's the year my brother was born, right? So she pulls out this Polaroid from 94, of her and this baby. And then, you know, we have one episode. Well, I think she tells Maze one episode, and then the next episode, Maze, like, tricks her into going to see her daughter. Or no, it wasn't a trick. She knew that what they were going to do, but they go to see her daughter. So there's this kind of interesting conversation about adoption and abandonment, let's say. Not saying that those are the same things. I want to make that very clear. But, like, Linda thinks of what she did to her daughter as abandonment. And when the daughter is talking about her situation, she said being adopted was one of the best things to ever happen to me. So,
and
there is,
I think, a very careful negotiation of power there, in that Maze is also negotiating her own feelings of abandonment from her mother, Lilith, the mother of demons. And which is sort of how this storyline works. Like, a lot of something that is really interesting that this show does, that they've perhaps done more skillfully in the past, but they're trying to do now still, is like to have these different complementary storylines where like Maze feels abandoned by her mother, Linda feels like she abandoned her daughter. So those storylines are put into conversation with each other, and we understand, like, the divine or the demonic through the lens of the human. So that's an instance where that's happening. But Linda has this very interesting moment or realization where, like, she realizes that now that she knows that, like, her daughter is okay, it is not her place to tell her daughter who she is and that she's her mother, because of the power differential, and that, like, her daughter needs to be the one to decide that that's what she wants. So Linda, with Maze's help, ends up, like, putting her name, I think, in a database to make it searchable if her daughter ever decides to look for her biological mother.
Right.
So it's a very, maybe perhaps a little bit heavy-handed, but I think still very careful negotiation of the power differential there and who
Mm-hmm.
should get to make the choice based on who
Mm-hmm.
has more or less power.
Yeah. And not that this matters of how well something is executed, but I think this is the only storyline that got tears out of me this season. Was Linda dealing with her motherhood, let's say, and then May's dealing with her mother. And that's because, I got things with my mom, but, this was definitely the stuff that like tugged at the heartstrings. But yeah, so I will say I did think the stuff with Maze trying to find her mother and tracking her mother down was interesting, if not a little heavy-handed. But one of the things that I don't want to say drove me nutty, that's not the right term, was this Maze had this quest this season to like find a quote-unquote soulmate, right? And Maze, because she's a demon, does not have a soul, whatever a soul is in this universe, right? Apparently, I guess humans have them, angels have something like a soul, but demons don't, right? So that becomes her catalyst, I guess, for partnering up with Michael, because he says he's going to get her a soul, and I don't know. I you and I had talked about this before, but we're both kind of like iffy about the whole soulmate trope in general, especially when it comes to romance stories. It's not my favorite trope.
Yeah.
So this turn for Maze of her needing a soul in order to find love because she's been abandoned by everybody. I don't know. I was kind of like, oh, okay, I guess this is the direction we can go.
It's more interesting when Maze is looking for a place she belongs, I think, than looking for a person to whom she belongs.
Yeah. Okay.
For me.
No, I like that a lot. No, that makes a lot of sense, because I was going to say one of the sequences I did really like was her sequence with Amenadiel. So not so much where she tries to... No, actually, I'm going to go with the whole sequence, because she tries to like pick a fight with him. Because that's how she likes to get her juices
that's how she
going,
communicates.
I suppose. That's how she communicates. So she picks a fight with him and tries to start making out with him, but is very kind of like, in that moment, she blurts out, it's not working, right? So she was trying to rekindle this relationship she had with Amenadiel in order to kind of fill some of the emptiness that she had inside.
Also, to be clear, their relationship, they were basically just fuck buddies.
Oh yeah, no, they were.
This was not a soulmate relationship.
No, absolutely not. And Maze was the one that made the decision to like cut things off, if I remember correctly. But what I did like about that sequence, or about that, I guess, plot line here, was that Maze and Amenadiel had a talk about it afterwards, in which Amenadiel kind of flexed some of his fatherhood muscles, I guess, in talking to Maze about what she's looking for, what she needs, and that in breaking it off with him, that was not her quote unquote last chance of finding love, because in doing that, she really was making decisions about who she wanted to be, what she wanted from life, so yeah, that sequence kind of touched my heart a little bit for our Maze. But I really do like what you're saying about this not finding a place where she belongs versus quote unquote someone she belongs to, because that's a lot of what she was doing in these previous seasons, right? She found friendship with Linda and with Chloe and with Ella. She got a job as a bounty hunter, so she wasn't just a bartender working for Lucifer anymore. I mean, we even had her having like bounty hunter episode, right? Where it was
that's one of the best episodes of like this whole show, I think, where Maze is the main character.
Yep. And as always, outfits on point, looking fantastic in the snow. So there was a lot of movement up until this season of Maze really fleshing out who she was. So for this suddenly to then just be about like, I need a soulmate, it felt, rushed again. I guess that's going to be my word for this podcast, that I kind of, wanted to see more how that fit into a conversation about what it meant to have a complete life. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That what it means to be unfulfilled in these particular kind of ways for her as a character, you know, for a demon who thought they were going to spend their entire lives in hell torturing people,
Mm-hmm.
you know? But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, that sounds good. Do we want to circle back and think about Lucifer and Chloe and what came next to wrap things up?
Oh, yeah. Do we want to talk about Ellen and Pete, though? Okay, well,
We can
super
talk
quick.
about them through the lens of Ella and Pete.
Okay, let's do that. Let's talk about them through the lens of Ella and Pete. So Ella got the short end of the stick this season, for real though.
Yeah, that was disappointing. So, for context, Ella, who is a delight, she is a ray of sunshine and also
She
a
is!
brilliant scientist.
And
But
I'd wear her t-shirts, which is not like a sex thing. I mean that. I'd wear her t-shirts. They're really cute. Go ahead. I'm
she
sorry.
has a history of going after bad boys, and by bad boys we mean like criminals, not just bad
criminals.
boys. But this season, she like consciously makes a move to be like, oh, like there is this nice guy that is nice, so I guess I will try to date him to like do something differently. And his name is Pete, and he's a crime reporter from my local newspaper, and they seem cute and happy, and a lot of the way that
Nerdy.
and cute and happy and nerdy, and they go to like a Star Trek convention, and like it's very lovely. And then it was all a lie because Pete was a serial killer.
Fucking serial killer in the turn of, oh god, I was so mad. It was so
so heavy-handed. It was so clunky. But part of the reason it was so disappointing is that Ella and Pete's relationship, which on the surface was very, very healthy, like they were communicating with each other, they were like being nice to each other, they were like listening to what the other one wanted, was held up as this sort of like standard to which Lucifer and Chloe felt like they could not compare. And then for that to be flipped on its head, and it turns out actually Pete's a psychopath, was just so disappointing. And it didn't work. And like it was like them trying to use that formula they have of like having something human to like shed light on like the divine that just didn't land.
Yeah.
And they did a real disservice to Ella, who is like another woman of color on this show, who like they just did her real dirty.
Yeah. And now like I guess I'm upset from a character sense that she was trying to do this thing for herself and it went so completely terribly wrong, you know, like I don't know. But yeah, so it was weird to have that relationship presented as a foil to Lucifer and Chloe, and then for it to fall apart so spectacularly. You know, like he tries to strangle her. You know, so yeah. So all that to say, we are grumbly about season 5 of Lucifer. That said, there are some good fight scenes. I
really did like the big epic fight scene showdown that like sort of concludes episode 8 until God shows up, because that's boring. But Michael and Maze fighting Lucifer and Amenadiel was like, I was super into that. It was also visually stunning because they also have like a conceit where time is stopped because Amenadiel is freaked the fuck out, and like there's like a broken window and the glass is floating in the air, and it's really visually spectacular.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I will say it was fun having Dennis Haybert as God. For those of you who do not know, he is a very, very popular actor, but most people might know him for being the Allstate insurance man.
Yep.
But
I'm mean, and I called him Budget Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, I was like, that is not nice. He's great. But I think Corinne was just salty about the season in general. But yeah, so we have feelings, as you can tell. But we would love to hear your feelings about Lucifer. Were we on the money? Did you agree with us? Did you not? Corinne, you took a breath. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm think maybe the last thing to sort of wrap things up to think about is like where, now that they did it, where do Lucifer and Chloe go from here?
I don't know. hell. I mean, I just I don't know. Well, we'll see what the next half of the season has in store. You know, now that God's on the floor, like, who knows? Who knows? Are we gonna? Maybe they'll go to heaven and they'll have an angel banquet. I don't know.
I don't want that.
You don't want that?
I don't want that.
So we'll see. But yeah, folks, people of the internet, where do you think Lucifer is going to go? Not only in the second half of season 5, but into season 6. Are you more enthused about this than we were? Are we completely wrong and off base? Do you want to just talk about how fabulous Maze is for the entirety of all Lucifer?
Do you want to just talk about Tom Ellis's butt?
I mean, yeah, you could totally do that. You can do that with us by finding us at Sex Love Lit on Instagram and Twitter. That's all one word, Sex Love Lit. And don't stop searching after Sex Love. Type it all in. And you can continue listening to us wherever you normally get podcasts. So if you have some Lucifans in your life and you think, hey, they should listen to this, send them to Apple Podcasts, send them to Spotify, send them to Anchor, and you can continue listening to us gab along. So yeah.
Thanks for joining us. If there's anything you think we should talk about that has some interesting sex and love in it, just let us know.
Oh, and as a little preview for next time, we will finally be indulging in Corinne's K-drama obsession and talking about It's Okay to Not Be Okay, which is currently, well, I guess it's finished airing, but it's on Netflix. So you can watch the whole thing and burn through it just like we are.
Our thoughts on that one preview will be much more positive. So like you should watch it.
Yes, you should totally watch it and then be prepared for the next episode of Sex Love Lit, which will be coming at you, I suppose, in the following month after this one, because we're grad students and we're busy. So thank you for listening to Sex Love Literature. It is always a pleasure, and we will see you next time. Bye.